Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another stream. Welcome back to another coffee hour. Today, we got a lot to cover in the news. We're going to be revisiting Palantir because Palantir seemed to have been dropping like a rock in the ocean. It didn't seem like it was ever going to stop. It was down quite a bit today in trading. So just saw an article and I just want to cover, what they think might be the reason why Palantir shares are dropping, but I also want to share something else along that same vein. We'll be talking about the Federal Reserve, their upcoming meeting, and then of course we're going to be talking a little bit about tariffs, some trade, and we'll be talking about SMCI, Supermicro. We're going to be talking about AMD, and we'll be finishing it off with some Nvidia news as well as a little bit of real estate stuff. So I think you guys, if you're a big holder of realty income, you'll definitely want to hear this. So Alex joined. What's up, man? Hey, welcome back to the stream. Welcome back, of course, and hope you are doing well. All right, guys. So like I was saying, we got a whole lot to cover. So let's just get right into it. All right. So first things off, we're going to start off with the portfolio update like we always do. And of course, I got my new background. Just want to make that apparent. All right. Put a lot of work into this yesterday, a lot of elbow grease, but no longer a white wall. So I need to do something about this wall. And then hopefully dim the lights a bit so it's not so bright and white in here. Anyways, let me get it going. What's up, Dan? Hey, welcome back, man. Dan from It's a Wealthy Life says, loving my 25K position in AMD, thinking about dumping another 10K. Man, yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into this stream. We'll get into it. Anyways, portfolio value sitting at 436,000. All right. So right now we have that doesn't include the margin, unfortunately. So this is why this value is vastly different than this value down here. But I'm down about, I think it was $35,000 or something like that. Or maybe it's a little bit more. I can't do math right now. I just woke up. Yeah, it looks like 45,000. Yeah, 45,000. There we go. All right. The coffee is starting to work. But yeah, I'm down about 45,000. Again, it was a sell-off. We kind of spoke about this last week as well, that, we can't have 2 weeks of just straight gains. And there certainly wasn't going to be a third week of another gain. So, this sell-off is not unsurprising. It's not really a shock, to be honest. But also we have the Federal Reserve speaking this week. So that is going to be, a huge one that's going to be on the docket. So we'll be talking about that here in just a moment. But yeah, this is the portfolio value. Of course, I'm going to do a portfolio update at the end of the stream. I did make some buys and I did get some dividend income. So I'll be showing you guys that exactly, what I got. All right, so moving on, we have the week. All right, we have tomorrow, the big day, the FOMC meeting. All right, this is where the Federal Reserve chairs are going to meet. They're going to discuss, the current economic condition, the outlook, and then, Jerome Powell's going to come out on stage. He's going to say, good afternoon. The stock market's going to drop probably, 50, 100 basis points or whatever, maybe 100%. I don't know. But it's going to drop, and then he'll get on with his speech, right? So tomorrow, after the market closes, everything else, I will be doing a stream to cover that whole meeting. All right. Hopefully, just like last time, there will be a recording. We can watch a recording. I'll give you guys some of my commentary, some of my thoughts. But also, if I find anything else, any other newsworthy stuff, I'll cover that as well. James, what's up, man? Welcome back. It's been a while, man. I haven't seen you around. Latro, hey, welcome back, man. Welcome back. So It's a Wealthy Life says, perfect. That is when I will add more AMD, when the market drops after Jerome Powell says good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is. Actually, yeah, afternoon right here, 2:30 p.m. So afternoon. All right. So we have a little bit of other stuff that I'm going to be looking at, and I need to get this in here. Where is it? All right, there it is. So I need to get this in here. So we already covered, we're going to be covering Supermicro today and AMD, all right? We covered Palantir. Palantir is a big position I have. Supermicro, again, don't like them, not a big fan of them, but, they are tied to Nvidia and they do give you kind of a good picture, a barometer of, data centers. So we're going to be looking at Supermicro and kind of just what's going on with Supermicro. We also have AMD that released their earnings today, so we'll be talking about them. Later in the week, I want to hear from ARM. ARM is another semi, and I just want to hear what they have to say if they're being impacted. So far, the semiconductor space has been very, very good. All right, there hasn't been a lot of turmoil there. The only one that got hammered the worst from what I found was Qualcomm. And you guys know that I have an ETF that's a semiconductor ETF. It holds about, I think, 10 or 15 different semiconductors. Qualcomm is one of them. So again, it's just you want to understand what's going on in the space, what's going on in the sector, so you guys, can kind of surmise, from all this CEO talk, okay, the sector is under a lot of pressure, or hey, they're weathering it and they're navigating it very well. So again, just understanding what's going on from these companies is a big deal. Like Palantir, for no reason whatsoever that I have found, well, I did find a reason, but for one reason or another, dropped substantially, 16%. Yesterday, I was watching my portfolio just evaporate, and I was like, damn, not again. Like, this can't be happening again. Like, come on. And of course, it was with Palantir. There's some thoughts out there, like people were just taking some chips off the table. People were, just taking some profits. But I actually listened to the entire earnings call with Palantir, right? With the C-suite of executives and everybody, and Alex Karp. So I listened to that whole thing, and it was actually really good. But there was one line I completely did not like. I must have glossed over or wasn't paying attention. But there was one stupid line that killed it, right? So Yahoo Finance was nice enough to do their own deep dive and publish an article. Why is Palantir stock crashing today? All right. And basically what they're saying is the numbers weren't enough. Palantir reported Q1 earnings per share, yada, yada, yada. Basically, it was just in line with estimates. It wasn't anything better than that. But despite the seemingly positive report, which it was, there was a key weakness that led to today's stock slide, and that is the global sales declined by 10% year over year. The international weakness is a concerning sign that calls into question Palantir's ability to continue its overall growth at the current pace. Now, this was mentioned on the earnings call, from what I gather. And again, no rhyme or reason. Like, by all other metrics, they are crushing it, but they had a 10% drop. I think this is I don't think this is a big deal in my opinion. Again, as newer markets are going to open up, I think Palantir is going to, just be lined up with contracts. That finance call, which is here, it's actually available on YouTube. I recommend everyone who's holding Palantir to listen to this thing. I wanted to do a whole, kind of like a whole summary of this. Unfortunately, I'd have to listen to the whole thing, and I was listening to this while I was at the gym, so I couldn't really, jot notes down. But I really recommend people listen to this. If you listen to this, you'll feel at ease about the stock price. Again, there is a bear thesis, and that bear thesis is that, the valuation of Palantir is too high, and, it doesn't match up with multiples, yada, 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 et cetera, right? That is the bear case, is that it doesn't fit by traditional metrics. But if you're looking at like someone like Dan Ives from Wedbush, he's more of a story-driven type of investor, at least in my opinion. He's going to look at the revenue, but he's also going to look at the story and what's creating that momentum behind Palantir. And Alex Karp, during this interview, mentioned something very fascinating. He's like, this moment is a culmination of 20 years of grinding, like the stock price climbing, right? It was 20 years worth of grinding to get to this point, and they have no intention of stopping or putting the brakes on. So I was really, really inspired by this speech. I was really inspired by everything that is going on with Palantir. And I am well assured as an investor that Palantir is not going to hit zero anytime soon. Yeah, they might reach some choppiness here or there, but to It's a Wealthy Life's point, he's a Tesla bull. I'm a Palantir bull, right? This is my Tesla. I'm going to ride this thing through the volatility, through the waves, and everything else. But I really recommend people watch this and listen to it, because they talk about a few other key points. Companies like Walgreens are adopting Palantir to help them wave through claims and documents and things like that. Things that would have taken days, lots and lots of people are now being done in a couple hours, right? That's very powerful. You have AIG, which is a huge institution, saying that it's helping them with their audits and basically their process improvements, making things way more streamlined. What would take, hundreds, if not, a couple of hundred analysts and man hours, probably hundreds and hundreds of man hours. Now they can do it in just a couple of hours, right? So Palantir adoption in a commercial space is going to be a very big step for this company. And once it gets more and more adopted in the European markets, it's going to start hitting the Asian markets, South Korea, Japan, they have huge financial markets out there. And then he also spoke about Europe. He also spoke about the European markets. It's not the EU. And I'm not going to lie, I had this kind of, I won't say a bias or something, but misinformed, I'll call it, right? There's the EU, but there's several parts of the EU, right? You have East EU, you have West EU, you have North, South, whatever, right? Obviously, right? But all these other EUs within the EU, they all have their own markets, their own companies. Germany, France, Italy, you have all these other nations. I can't remember all of them, but yeah, you have all these other nations in there, right? And they all have their own companies, their own stuff. So they're going to be breaching into those markets. And when that happens or starts to gain more momentum, this company again is going to have just another tailwind. So I just want to check the chat real fast. Let's see. James Mack says, yeah, it's been a minute. I was on vacation, took a nice break from social. Hey, good, man. That's awesome. That's freaking awesome. Yeah. Everyone should take a break from social media. I have to step back sometimes. Like, as a matter of fact, I'll be stepping back in a couple of days once I solidify the plans. So I probably won't be doing I won't be doing lives or videos for a couple of days because I'll be on, a semi quasi vacation, I suppose. Latro says, added a bit of Palantir, not a huge percentage. So Palantir, PLTY is yield max yield income ETF. So awesome. That's awesome. Good to hear that. Latro also says, hit a homer with quantum stocks the last few days. Took a pop and gradually buying them back in on the dip. QBTX, Ionics, Qubits, and Qubits, or QUBT and QBTS. If I'm not mistaken, is that QUBT from Defiance? I think that's where that one is from. The QBTS, that's a company, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the quantum stuff is really exciting. I haven't really deep dived into that stuff, but it looks like something I might actually be interested in. Whether it's going to be from Defiance, though, I have no idea. I did listen to a couple interviews with Sylvia, who's the fund manager over there. I mean, she's a smart person, definitely, but a lot of her funds I think the quantum fund is probably the flagship fund that she has because that one has been doing well, relatively speaking. But it seems like a lot of the other stuff, the cover call stuff and everything doesn't seem to work out as well as, probably some might have intended. But yeah, definitely, I'm going to check that out. I'm going to check out those quantum stocks. I think that I want to open some coverage on them because I do like Jensen Huang, again, Nvidia. He was like super surprised at his GTC conference a couple months ago. He was like, whoa, I didn't even know there was like quantum companies already. So quantum is really fascinating. It's a really interesting sector. and I definitely want to at least try to get in on the ground floor. I know it's obviously very late, but I still want to at least maybe open up some coverage because I'm curious how they're going to fare up against crypto and the blockchain, right? I think that's really going to be an interesting fight. I know there's someone in the chat, Alex, who mentioned it. That's who it was. Alex was the one who mentioned it. So shout out to you. He was the one that mentioned it and talking about crypto. And I just did a couple Google searches and to try to wrap my mind around it. But anyways, let me bring it back. So It's a Wealthy Life says Palantir is sitting on not even $1 billion in cash and $270 billion in market cap. Tesla's sitting on $37 billion in cash and about to launch a real world AI and is only $800 billion. Yeah. Wealthy Life. I don't dispute those facts, but I have this for you. When people ask me if I'm leaving or if I'm selling out of Palantir, this is what I say. I'm not leaving.
I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving.
All right, let me stop. I was queuing you up for that. I knew that was going to come up, so I wanted to prep this video already. But yeah, I'm not leaving Palantir. I don't care what you could say, because at one point Tesla had the same problems. You know, Tesla was overvalued, over rich, yada yada yada, and you know, look at it today. You know, so again, Palantir is my Tesla to you. So, anyways. Let's see. Latro says Intel Corp is still cheap, $20. Wealthy Life says Palantir is at 50 as a buy. Latro says dumb luck, timing, and quantum volatile. Quantum is super volatile. Not a safe play. You better get at timing. Pedro, what's up, man? Or Padre, what's up? Quantum is years away. All right, let me get back to the news stream. All right, guys. So anyways, like just to summarize real quick, you know, Palantir, again, recommend you guys check this out if you're a believer in Palantir. This company just has a lot of room to grow. All right. So I will end with that. So we have Trump officials, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent and Trade, I think it's Trade Secretary or something like that, Greer. I don't know what his actual, U.S. Trade Representative. There we go. U.S. Trade Rep Greer to meet with Chinese counterparts on trade and economic issues. So this is finally happening, guys. This is finally happening. The two sides are finally coming to the table to talk. All right. Nobody said who reached out to who, right? Everyone's trying to save face, but it's finally happening, and this is a good sign. All right, I think the markets, actually, I already know that the markets are reacting well, because you can check the aftermarket and the S&P 500 is already starting to climb. So this is excellent news. This is what we were all waiting on. Hopefully, you know, better news to come. I don't think any deal is going to be struck, obviously, from this. As a matter of fact, you can read it down below. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer will meet with their Chinese counterparts in Switzerland this weekend to discuss economic and trade matters. Their offices announced Tuesday. We have shared interest, Bessent said on Fox News. The current tariff war isn't sustainable, said Bessent, especially on the Chinese side. And you know 145% tariffs, 125% is the equivalent of an embargo. We don't want to decouple. What we want is fair trade, right? This is what it's always been about. And then he goes on to say that my sense is that this will be about de-escalating the trade war, not about a big trade deal, right? But we've got to de-escalate before we can move forward. So this is a good thing, because again, the Chinese government, Chinese spokespeople have come out and said they want the United States to come to the table with, in sincerity and good faith. And by dropping the tariffs, so they can allow for negotiations, this is, I think the way ahead. So just as a investor at the very, tiny little speck on this, grand scheme of global trade and global markets, this is a good sign. This is what we've been waiting for, guys. So we just have to hang in there. Markets are still a little choppy, but I think we are set up for greener days. All right. We will be set up for much more greener days as time goes on. So anyways, this is, again, really big news. We had some other news, some other very big news, right? Trump teases very, very big announcement, says not necessarily on trade, but very big, very important, right? I just love the way this dude talks, man, because it's very simple language. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said there is a very, very big announcement coming as soon as this week or maybe by Monday, but did not provide any more details. He also spoke about this on the airplane ride from, I think, Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. I think he was coming from Mar-a-Lago. But anyways, we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like, as big as it gets. And I won't tell you on what, and it's very positive. It is really, really positive, and that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. They're heading off to Switzerland. They're heading off to the UAE for, I forget what is specifically, but I mean, that doesn't really matter for us. No idea what this could be. Have no inkling. But again, the market right now, super rational. The market is thriving on just good news. So hopefully this news is really good, whether it's on trade or not, but it's good enough that it will, again, make investors a little more calm, a little more, easygoing. And, again, the markets rise, basically on investor sentiment. At least right now, it's all news driven. It's all feely, touchy, goody, news, right? That's what we're living off of right now. So, waiting to hear what this is. All right. I just included this in here because it's starting to make its way in. I spoke about this about a week ago, that India and Pakistan are basically beefing. They're basically fighting each other. India cut off Pakistan's water because there's one river that flows basically from India into Pakistan. It's in fresh water. And they basically put a dam there and then cut off their water supply. This is all stemming from an attack that happened in India where a bunch of Indian troops were killed, and they were claiming it was a terrorist attack, but really they were claiming it was Pakistan that was the one that carried it out. So now they're just fighting each other, right? So what does this mean for us as investors? Well, not a whole lot right now. However, if this continues and escalates, this could mean something, right? If you guys remember back to, 2020, I think 2022, if I'm not mistaken, when the Ukraine and Russian war kicked off, the S&P 500 dropped substantially, right? Again, fear, war, uncertainty, any of that kind of stuff that happens is going to send the market down. So as this news starts to make its rounds, don't be surprised if the market starts getting a little more choppy. Okay. India and Pakistan are two nuclear powers. Okay. And I know this is a finance channel, but I like to cover this stuff because it can impact us. So India and Pakistan are two nuclear powered nations. They have nukes. They can carry out these nukes and these tactical strikes on each other. They border each other. Okay. So it's been escalating quite a bit. And hopefully it doesn't get to the point where they're invading each other, right? Hopefully it's just a tit for tat, border skirmish here or there, missile launch here or there. India lost a couple troops. Hopefully they can get a couple troops off from Pakistan. Pakistan has been moving a ton of troops to the border. So again, this looks like it's going to get spicy. But if you guys start seeing this more and more in the news, don't be surprised if the stock market starts getting a little more choppy. All right. But that was it. I just wanted to cover this just because, again, it can impact us, wars, conflicts, things like that. When they reach the news, it creates uncertainty. Apple just moved its manufacturing to India. So who knows how that will actually impact, India. India actually, and I didn't find the article. I read it, but I didn't find it, in time for this stream. But India actually struck a good trade deal with the United Kingdom. So, and they were attributing this because of Trump's tariffs, right? So take that for what it is, but it looks like the tariffs are having some type of net positive impact around the world. I'm not saying I'm for Trump or against him, for tariffs or not. I'm just saying what I read in the news. All right. All right, let's move on to the spiciest news. We have Supermicro in the news. Supermicro issues weak guidance and cites economic uncertainty and tariff impacts. All right, we already knew this. You guys already know that I don't like Supermicro. It's not even a fact of being bearish or not. I just don't like the company. All right, they're only propped up by Nvidia. That is the only thing they got going for them. If they didn't have Nvidia, this company would be trash. All right, so let's go. All right. Supermicro issued disappointing guidance on Tuesday, a week after the server maker provided preliminary results for the latest quarter that fell shy of Wall Street's expectations. They had earnings per share EPS 31 cents adjusted versus the 50 cents expected. And remember, last week they came out with a report basically revising their numbers, saying that they took a huge, or they had a huge impact because of the tariffs. So then a lot of numbers were revised. That sent the stock tumbling down, and then today's earnings call sent the stock tumbling down a little bit more. So revenue 4.6 billion versus the 5.2 billion that was expected. While the latest numbers were below analyst estimates, they were in line with early estimates Supermicro disclosed last week. The company said at the time that revenue in the fiscal third quarter would be between 4.5 billion and 4.6, and that earnings per share would fall between the range of 29 cents and 31 cents. The stock plummeted 12% after the release, right? That was last week. Supermicro is noting that the macroeconomic environment is likely to weigh in on performance. The company said following President Donald Trump's announcement in early April of sweeping new tariffs of imported goods. We know this is Liberation Day. Supermicro revenue grew 19% year over year during the quarter, which ended in March 31st. Net income of 17 cents per share, down 66 cents the same quarter. Let's see. So it's been a treacherous year, past year. for Supermicro. Prior to that, the stock had been on a tear due to the company's position in artificial intelligence, selling servers packed with Nvidia's graphic processing units, GPUs. Over the summer, short seller Hindenburg Research, which I'm sad to see these guys go. They're actually closing up shop, but if you can get in and like kind of read some of these reports, especially we covered the Hindenburg Research on this stream way long ago, but Hindenburg Research actually published this thing. And that's what really started the downfall for Supermicro. So they issued a report of Supermicro claiming it had found poor accounting manipulation. In October, Ernst & Young, which is a huge accounting firm, it's probably I think it's one of the top 5, accounting firms in the world. But yeah, Ernst & Young resigned as the company's auditor after raising concerns about internal control over the financial reporting and other matters, right? Supermicro, basically Ernst & Young left Supermicro. They're like, we don't want to deal with this crap anymore. We're out. So they left. The market reacted. That something funny and odd is going on at Supermicro. Supermicro dropped even more. And then they hired this new company. And, this company probably lied for them. Said, yeah, their books are not cooked. Everything looks great. It's not a big deal. They were late to file for the NASDAQ. They were about to get delisted, and then finally they got their report in on time. So, oh look, what do you know? Hey, we got some breaking news, guys. China to cut lending rates by 10 points, bank reserve requirement ratio by 50 points. All right. I don't know what any of that means, but good for them. But lending by 10 points. I guess it's probably the interest rate. But yeah, anyways, Supermicro, again, I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. I don't care if it's from a yield max fund, a yield max option income fund, whatever. I just would not touch this, anything related to Supermicro. All right. I know that they have a deep partnership with Nvidia. And this whole idea that, as Nvidia grows, Supermicro should grow with them. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, another motherboard maker, another hardware manufacturer comes out and partners with Nvidia and just completely removes Supermicro. I don't know if the possibility of that. But I don't know. Me personally, again, like I said, Supermicro, if you're a holder of this stock or a believer in this company, good for you. I just don't see anything good coming from this company. There were so many YouTubers that were hyping the stock up on its climb up. And then when Hindenburg Research published this stuff, it started to decline and decline bad. And then that's when more and more people were like, hey, let's double down on this stock. It's a wealth generation stock. It's going to make you a millionaire and all this other BS. And it just continued declining from there. So I don't know. Anyways, moving on. And again, not to jab at those guys, no one always gets a call right? No one can ever get a call right. But my critique or my criticism about all of this is that people are only looking at the chart. They're not looking at the fundamentals. They're not looking at the reason for it, the story behind why the stock is dropping or anything like that. They just say, oh, look, stock high, now low, buy, right? Like that's not really good advice. So that's my only critique or criticism about that. All right, so we have another set of news. AMD beats on earnings, but it will take a $1.5 billion hit to revenue from chip restrictions to China, all right? AMD, Nvidia, they have the same problem. They both create these really unique, specific chips that can be exported to China, right, that meet U.S. export controls. They're suboptimal when compared to their premier U.S.-based chips, like the Blackwell from Nvidia. But, if they can't ship these because of some, arbitrary export license, they're losing out on revenue, right? They're losing out on revenue and they're losing out on market share. So AMD, again, they have the same pain as Nvidia right now. All right. AMD reported first fiscal quarter earnings on Tuesday that topped expectations and provided a strong guide for current revenue. The company's data center segment, which honestly I'm more interested than anything, including AI graphics and central processing sales, topped estimates and rose 57%, which is good. That's a good tailwind for AMD. AMD's forecast also included $800 million in costs that the company said it would incur because of the U.S. limited the export of some of its company's AI chips during the quarter. Lisa Su, fantastic person. Like as from everything I've read about her, she's a freaking smart person. She took AMD, which was a fledgling trash garbage company at one point, and then just turned it into the behemoth that it is today. Before stocks, before IT, before I was working in IT and everything else, my first machine was an AMD machine. I loved AMD. I loved ATI. That was my preferred graphics processor, or whatever you want, a graphics chip, right? I was always team AMD. And then, like, you know, just Intel Nvidia just dominated, right? Nvidia dominated, but AMD just came out and just overtook Intel. Intel's been around for a very long time, and for AMD to take the market share away from Intel is kind of a breath of fresh air, to be honest. Intel, who knows if that stock or that company is going to be able to turn around. Lisa Su, again, was able to navigate a lot of this stuff and break through a lot of the barriers and bring this company, bring AMD to where it's at today. So very, very fascinating person. AMD reported first fiscal quarter earnings on Tuesday. Shares of AMD were up 4% in extended trading before falling about 1%, right? Here's how the chip maker did. Earnings per share, EPS, 96 cents adjusted, 94 cents expected. So they beat on EPS. Revenue, 7.44 billion versus 7.13 billion. Again, they beat on revenue. So AMD doing absolutely great right now. AMD CEO Lisa Su said that the company achieved its first quarter results despite grappling with regulations on advanced AI chip exports. The company forecasted $800 million end costs that the company said it would incur because the U.S. limited export of some of the company's artificial intelligence chips. So I'm watching and keeping an eye on anything that comes from the Trump administration, whether it's Scott Bessent or Howard Lutnick or whoever, or even Donald Trump about these chips, all right, about, you know, exporting back to China. Jensen Huang, I haven't seen anything or heard anything from Lisa, but Jensen Huang, we're going to cover him in here in a minute, but he basically said it best. He's like, if we decouple our exports from China, China is going to rely on domestic chips. Those domestic chip makers, you know, Huawei and whoever else is out there. I forget the chip makers out there, but Huawei is the biggest one I know of. If they are forced to innovate and actually come up with these chips, they're going to catch up, right? They're going to be able to catch up to Nvidia. They're going to be able to start producing their own chips. They're going to take all the market share away from Nvidia, and this is going to be a big problem, right? They're going to catch up to American innovation, and the whole point of these exports, these chip, basically these suboptimal, China-specific export chips, is to keep them at a level that does not reach, the premier, like Blackwells, right? The premier AI chips that are in the U.S. This is to stifle or even halt some of their innovation and their growth in China. But, we're still selling them some of the best, high-end chips. So anyways, AMD also expected about a $700 million loss in revenue during the current quarter from export controls and $1.5 billion through the total end of the year. While we face some headwinds from the dynamic macro and regulatory environments, including recently announced export controls for the Instinct MI308X shipments to China, we believe they are more offset by the powerful tailwinds from our leadership of their leadership product portfolio. So they don't only have like AI chips that are shipping to China, they have gaming chips, they have desktop chips for commercial use or for personal use, they have server chips, and they have their own AI chips for here in the United States. So AMD's is the second place server central processing unit vendor behind Intel, which honestly, the only reason why Intel is doing as well as it is because, it's a Wintel world. Everyone just grew up with Intel. But I think AMD could probably take away some of that market share away from Intel, but Intel has some very deep contracts especially with the government. But its EPYC line of processors has been taking market share in recent years. The company is also the closest competitor to Nvidia for big GPUs or graphic processing units. So again, they acquired ATI way back when AMD did. They acquired ATI. ATI was strictly a graphics processing unit company. So they acquired them, brought them in-house, and then AMD has just been producing graphics processing units as well as, computer processing units, CPUs. Those are the kind of chips that are deployed in data centers by the thousands for building generative AI. It did $5 billion in AI GPU sales for the company in fiscal 24. I know there are some uncertainties as it relates to tariffs and other things, but this is one of those areas from an infrastructure standpoint, there continues to be investment. So she's basically saying that people are still investing in AI, investing in artificial intelligence, and buying up their chips. So she is saying that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, especially with the whole stuff with China, but they're still able to make money, right? Because people are still buying this stuff locally. That was it for AMD. Hope you guys enjoyed that bit. Again, I like AMD. Don't get me wrong. I don't hate AMD. I just don't think that they could be or beat someone like Nvidia. Only time will tell. I could be completely wrong, but it doesn't mean that you still can't make money with AMD, right? It doesn't mean that AMD is a bad company by any stretch. All right. You can see just from the chart, it's meteoric rise to the top, and it's just every single year it's just been beating and beating and beating. So again, shout out to anyone holding AMD. All right. I'm not gonna even cover this. You guys can probably just stop and look, but yeah, this is basically some charts of the data, and it's just makes it easier on the eyes. But yeah, they're just doing really, really well, right? Again, their gaming revenue doesn't seem to be doing that well. People, I guess, in gaming don't like AMD chips. They probably like the Intels, it's been so long since maybe the Core i7s. It's been a long time since I built a workstation. Nvidia in the news. All right, real quick. Nvidia CEO says that being locked out of China's AI market would be a tremendous loss. We'll just cover this very briefly. We're at minute 36. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang said on Tuesday that China's AI market will likely reach about $50 billion in the next 2 to 3 years, and that missing out on it would be a tremendous loss, right? Not just for Nvidia, but definitely for AMD or other semiconductor companies, right? Huang said being able to sell into China would bring back revenue, taxes, and create lots of jobs in the United States, which, the United States is trying to beef up its manufacturing of basically everything. Or technology stuff. So this would be a tailwind, if anything, if they can get back into China. Nvidia said it would take a $5.5 billion quarterly charge due to the restrictions, right? Basically, they can't export their H20 chips. I keep forgetting to check if it's the Hopper, but basically they can't export their H20 chips to China, and that is a problem, right? So that would be a $5.5 billion quarterly charge to Nvidia, so about $22 billion worth of revenue for the year, right? That they would otherwise just say bye-bye to. So again, Nvidia is also feeling the same exact pain as AMD, but I honestly think Nvidia probably has a little more pull than AMD, at least with ties to the current administration, the Trump administration. So hopefully some pressure mounts, something comes from those talks between Scott Bessent, Greer, and their Chinese counterparts, and we get some good news, maybe some lowering of restrictions, maybe some tariffs get bumped down. Hopefully semiconductors pop, and hopefully these chip manufacturers pop after that news. So we'll see. All right. For everybody holding Realty Income, all right, this is in the news. I talked about this a couple of times. Realty Income, too damn large, right? Hard for them to make any type of money. Realty Income, ticker O. They're the monthly dividend paying company. They are a real estate investment trust. Okay, we talked about them being way too large in the United States, and that in order for them to grow, they're going to have to look into other markets. Well, guess what market that they're looking into, or that they're starting to pour more money into, is what I should say. They're going into the European market. All right, Realty Income targets $4 billion in 2025 investment with strong European focus. We can just scroll down. Most of this is word salad. Q&A, this is from the earnings call. Samides Rose asked from Citigroup or Citibank, asked about the European investment focus and leasing metrics. Roy explained that 65% of Q1 investments were in Europe, and probably the rest were sprinkled around the United States or other markets, right? Driven by opportunities in retail parks with below market rents providing significant repositioning potential, meaning that if they're going to buy like a strip center, a mall, a triple net lease or something like that, they're going to buy these. Let's just say it's a building, right? The building is charging $1,000 for rent, right? For the tenants. But the actual market rent is about $1,500. So just like here in the United States, you buy a home, increase the rents. That's what they're doing. They're buying undervalued, below market rent infrastructure buildings, and then beefing them up, making them look nice, bringing the market rents up to date, and then repositioning the building for probably either a sale or to continue to hold, right? So this is a good thing that Realty Income is doing to continue growing their portfolio, to continue growing the company. So again, anyone holding Realty Income, this is a good sign for you guys. I am a big holder in Realty Income, so I welcome this, right? This is good. Realty Income is I don't think it's ever going to reach like $100 a share. I don't think so. I think it'll probably, kind of hover around its current levels, give or take maybe $5 or $6, maybe as high as even like 8 or 9. But I don't see a stock like Realty Income like boosting, especially a REIT, boosting all the way to like $100 a share. I just don't see it. Is it possible? Sure. But I just don't see it because it's such a stable like REIT. It's just a boring company. They buy buildings, they put tenants in there, they fix the buildings, put tenants in there, charge rent. Like there's nothing sexy about that. There's no new technology, there's no adoption, there's no freaking AI, there's no tech, there's nothing. It's just a very boring, simple business, and that's why I love real estate. All right, so there are risks and concerns that came from the earnings call. Potential tariff impacts on certain clients and sectors. People like Dollar General, they have a sizable not a sizable position, but they lease out a lot of space to like a Dollar General or, a Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree, Dollar General, they get a lot of their products from China. China's tariff stuff is, kind of expensive right now. So it's no longer a dollar, right? It's probably like $1.45, $2, $3, right? Whatever it is. So, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, those types of companies that have a lot of product coming in from China, they're going to be affected by this. And of course, your Realty Income, being a real estate company, that leases out to these businesses, they're going to be impacted by that as well. Because if Dollar Tree, Dollar General are not making any revenue and they have to close down stores, well, what does that mean for Realty Income? Now they got to go through the court battles, get paid what they're owed because these are contracts. Or they have to, kick them out and then find new tenants to lease the space. So again, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, just as an example, these are big franchises, big stores, big chains, right? This is the type of client that Realty Income wants. They don't want like the mom and pop shops. They want the Walgreens. They want the Texas Roadhouses. They want the Dollar Generals, the Walgreens, all those other people, right? They want those types of clients. Economic uncertainties, geopolitical influences on capital markets and investment opportunities, of course, maintaining the balance between disciplined capital allocation, leveraging improved cost of capital for opportunistic investments. This is a lot of real estate speak. Basically, they're just being very careful where they put their money, and they're being extra due diligent when they're analyzing a market, right? They're looking for those deep value plays, those deep value buildings, maybe portfolios of buildings that they can add value, charge extra rent, make more money, right? And then for you as the investor, make that dividend income. All right, so the final takeaway, Realty Income demonstrated really strong Q1 results driven by strategic investment in Europe and continued operational resilience. Of course, Realty Income is the GOAT. They are one of the best operators in the space, right? You have Realty Income, you have Triple Net Lease, ticker NNN. You also have Agree Realty, ticker ADC. Definitely recommend people check them out as well. They're not bad by any stretch of the imagination either. All right, so that's about it for the stock sector. So let me just hit the chat. So we had a poll. Do you think the Fed will drop rates tomorrow? 12% of you said yes, and 88% of you said nope. And let's see what the CME Fed Watch Group says. They say, and I know you guys can't see this. There we go. They say there's a 98% chance of no change and a 1.5% chance of ease, right? According on the probabilities, according to the votes. So that is perfectly in alignment with our poll here. And I'm going to agree with the 88% and say, nope, we are not getting it. The economic data from last week has been very positive. Inflation is continuing to trend down, or at least, not trend up. So this is not causing the Fed to have to, lower interest rates. They're probably going to wait another couple of months before, to wait to see how the tariffs are impacting us before they make a cut decision. So awesome. And I'm glad everyone was able to get their poll in. All right, let me hit the chat because I haven't checked it this whole stream. Let's see. Let's see. Quantum is super volatile. Says it's a wealthy life, not a safe play. You better be good at timing. Quantum is years away. So Latro says quantum can decode blockchain. Once I saw is making quantum resistant wallets. Can't remember the symbol. Aurora maybe. I mean, I don't know. I am not like in the quantum space. It is interesting, quantum computing. I know like way back when, we're all thinking what quantum computing could mean because it exists and it doesn't exist at the same time. So I guess that's quantum state, right? I don't know. But quantum technology is something I want to look into and probably open some coverage on. Aside from, the semiconductors, the chips, the AI stuff, maybe I'll open up some coverage on quantum stuff. So I appreciate you giving a list of that, the tickers in the chat, because I would definitely take a look at those. Latro says China deal on tariffs will pop the markets. I 100% agree. Latro says SPYU is a 4x play on SPX. Oh my God, let's pump up that leverage. All right, guys, let's pump that leverage up. Those are rookie numbers. All right, what you need to do is have money and then take margin, right? And then use that margin and buy a 4x play. That way you're 5x leverage. All right, that is what the pros do. And of course, I'm being facetious. Don't do that. This is not financial advice. All right. Keep up the good work. Says Latro, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Padre says my IFNN stock is fine. I'm not sure of that ticker. I'm guessing that's international because I saw that comment come in when I was talking about the international market. So if that is the case, that is awesome. One interesting note, and I should have probably covered this on the stream at some point. China is actually subsidizing their stock market right now. They're injecting a lot of money, similar to what the United States did during the Rona, where we just basically injected a ton of money into the stock market, buying up bonds of companies and everything else. So China's doing kind of the same thing. So their stock market, yes, it's doing well right now, but when you look under the hood, it's being subsidized by the Chinese government. And right now, there's some bigger things happening in the world, especially between the two superpowers, United States and China. You have almost like a currency war happening. So it's, again, just interesting to see. Again, at our level, at the investor level, we don't see these things. We don't think about these things. But when you start digging down that rabbit hole, it gets really, really spicy really fast. All right. Shannon says they did the same thing for online gaming ad company. Can't think of the ticket right now. I'm not sure what you're referencing there. It's a Wealthy Life says AMD stock is low. Buy. Hey, I'm in agreement with you, man. If you're a believer in AMD and you want to buy in right now, I'm not going to say it's a good time to buy in, but I will say that, hey, if you're a big believer in AMD and think the stock will go up, then right now could be a great time. I know it was under a lot of pressure, so I haven't checked what the AMD 3-month chart, but I'm sure it's still down by a lot. So definitely worth it. Shannon says, but it was having huge gains and losses. Path to Retirement says, hit the like button. Hey, appreciate you, man. Thank you. I'm holding SMD bag. Oh man, I'm not gonna even go there. Padre says, I'm glad everyone was able to get their poll in. Quoting me. All right, funny guy. All right, let's cover the markets. We'll hop into a portfolio update, and I'll share some of the changes I have, and then we'll tie up the stream. All right. So S&P 500, we are up nothing. We are actually down 77 basis points, right? But after market, we're doing very well. I'll show you guys that once I hop into the Robinhood app. But down 77 basis points again. I saw this happening and I'm like, man, not again. Like we're heading south for the summer, right? It's done. But if you look at this, right, the market it's traded flat, almost flat today, right? Aside from this last bit of time here. But there's a huge pop after this, right? This is very reminiscent of most charts that happen right to the run up of a Federal Reserve, announcement where they trade kind of flat. They don't really do anything. So I don't know. This is just an interesting note, something to just be aware of, I suppose. NASDAQ 100 is down 88 basis points. All right. Not too hot there. Had a pretty bad day. Bitcoin, surprisingly, on an absolute tear. It's just doing well. It's not going south for the summer like it was, not too long ago. Doing really well. I'm not sure what this large pump is. Whoever got in these lows, congratulations. But yeah, it looks like it's back up. It keeps doing this. Like I keep seeing it throughout the day where it'll continue trending down, it'll pump, and then it'll trend down. So I don't know. Maybe there's market movers, there's whales out there just manipulating the crap out of Bitcoin. So congrats to anyone who's been buying Bitcoin. Congrats to anyone who's holding MSTY. All right, I know we talk about this a lot. Any Misty holders, congratulations to you guys. You guys are absolutely killing it. Depending on your cost basis and when you got in. If you got in at $17, I hate you because I honestly wish I did. Not really. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll just get in on MST now, which is a 1.5x, 2x levered position at MSTR with weekly pay. Maybe I'll just do that, just to one up everybody. Shannon says, I was saying Hindenburg Research did a short report on AppLovin. Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with AppLovin, but that's cool. Lacho says, no, I fumbled a wet noodle pull. All right. Gold, we had a huge sell-off. All right. Right at the end of the day, huge sell-off. Not sure why. I think investors are sensing something like the recession fears are overblown. Maybe they're starting to flock back to equities. Maybe they're starting to flock back to, other assets that they're just like, hey, whatever, gold's not even a big deal. There are a couple gold holders in the community, in the chat. I know you guys were talking about there will be a huge pullback for gold at some point. So I hope there's a big enough pullback that will, pique your interest. 2.1% drop, that is a big deal, especially for something like gold futures. So, for it to drop again, I think, this is driving investors saying, or this is market sentiment saying that, hey, Federal Reserve, maybe they're going to drop it. I think there's probably a likelihood that they might actually drop it. Or recession fears are overblown, or the China trade deal, China tariff stuff, that is starting to materialize, right? The whole Scott Bessent, Greer meeting with their counterparts, I think that's also really good news and probably why gold is selling off. All right. Fears are starting to come down a bit. Whoops, wrong one. Okay. 10-year treasury. Again, this just seems to keep fluctuating between these 2 points. Let's see, if we look at the 3-month, they seem to just be staying in this range. A lot of refinancing is coming up. Again, I keep talking about this refinance stuff. Refinancing is coming up. If we don't get this down, there is still close to $1 trillion worth of debt that is coming due just in mortgages, right? Just in commercial mortgages. And if those stay higher for longer and they can't extend and pretend, well, there's going to be a cascading effect to that where, mortgages just default. Real estate is going to go on sale. Banks are not going to want to hold this stuff. Banks are going to have to write it off their balance sheet, et cetera. You can have a close to almost reminiscent of like a 2008, 2009, scenario kind of playing out. Do I think that's going to happen? Honestly, probably not. But again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. So keeping that in mind, VNQ, Real Estate Index Fund from Vanguard, that was down 77 basis points. This was hovering around like 89, ish, 89 something. So anytime it's above $89, I'm happy. Down to 882. Not too bad. I mean, it's not trending worse, right? It's not getting worse. I think, really the REITs are probably going to feel a pinch tomorrow if the rates are not dropped. So again, we'll see how that goes. All right. Just checking the comments real quick. Let's see. Latro says, no, I fumbled. I'm not going to repeat that. Padre says, retrace to 3 or 2,800 and I'm loading up. He's referencing gold, all right? Referencing gold. If it retraces back to 3,000 or 2,800, you're going to buy back in. So, hell yeah. I've never seen gold this high. I've never seen gold outperform the S&P 500. So this is crazy, right? And we've been covering gold since we pretty much started streaming after the new year, right? Always covered gold. And it's just been constantly just going up. So Liberation Day, you know, again, right here, where is it? Yeah, right here. Liberation Day, nothing was spared. All assets just basically tumbled. But this would have been a great time to buy right here, right? It was down. You could have got in 15% gain, right? That would have been really, really nice. Okay, cool. Let's hop into the portfolio update, guys. Let me get my Robinhood for you. So It's a Wealthy Life says, I just started my Roth 401k. Dude, I started my Roth 401k right as I was leaving my last W-2. I wish the whole idea for me personally was doing 5 years of max contributions of the 401k and then 5 years of max contributions to the Roth, right? Because that would give you about 100k in cash for each account. And then, you know, you just do the simple S&P 500 math, right? Doubles every 10 years, you know, so you could realistically walk away with about $1 million to $1.5 million in both accounts, right? If you just put it into an index and just let them ride it their way up, right? I did Roth 401k for 2 years, and I did the 401k for 5 consecutive years, if I remember correctly. So I didn't get to finish my Roth plan, but I mean, it didn't matter anyways, because I ended up cashing out of all of it anyways, right? So whatever. Been in pre-tax accounts for 25 years. Jeez Louise. Man, yeah, you got a fat nest egg, I'm sure. You got a fat nest egg. All right, let's look at the portfolio, guys. So no big changes here. All right, we did get some dividend income, so I'm going to be using this probably to buy Chippy, okay? I'm probably going to be using this money to buy Chippy. I haven't quite decided yet. Still need to do some deep soul searching there. But margin looking pretty good, still low risk, all right? Unless we face another catastrophic drop like we did on Liberation Day, I'm feeling very comfortable using this much leverage. There's still a lot of pundits out there. There's still a lot of financial people saying you should de-risk your portfolio, get out of leverage, get out of higher risk assets, right? Whatever that means to you. Honestly, I'm so into leverage right now. I can't get out, but I wouldn't even want to get out anyways, right? But if, you know, people who aren't using leverage and are thinking about it, you might want to just tread carefully, okay? There is still the looming threat of recession, all right? There is still a possibility. Scott Bessent was on Fox not too long ago. Actually, I take that back. He just had a hearing. I don't know the committee. I was watching it on YouTube last night, today, your guys' time. But Scott Bessent was asked flat out, do you think we're going to have a recession? And Scott Bessent replied with, the data does not show we are going to have a recession, right? And not only that, the GDP numbers that came out during last week's report, the negative 3% or negative 3 basis point, GDP growth, he expects those numbers to be revised in the coming months or the coming weeks, right? To show true GDP growth or negative growth, right? So, negative growth, I guess that's oxymoron. But anyways, he expects, the numbers to be revised and they're going to be revised upwards. That's going to show, that was kind of an overblown fear. So waiting to hear more. Again, Scott Bessent's a very, very intelligent guy. Doing a little bit of research on the person, you'll understand that he worked for George Soros. He's been a hedge fund manager. He's worked for several big players in the space. This guy is really, really intelligent. As a matter of fact, George Soros is kind of that infamous investor that was able to crash several countries' currencies, Britain being one of them, or the UK being one of them. And Scott Bessent was a trader or an investor under George Soros when that happened. So, Scott Bessent, if you read his Wikipedia page, he actually had a hand in toppling the currency for the UK. So again, just really interesting guy. So I like to hear it anytime he speaks. And again, he was he had a hearing today. And they asked him, do you think that, the U.S. is in a recession or heading to a recession? He said the data doesn't show it is, right? There's a lot of market noise. People would love to talk about recession, right? Fear sells news. Fear sells. So that's what he was kind of talking about. So I'm in agreement there because fear does absolutely sell. Chippy, the only difference here, I bought 18 additional shares and I bought that earlier in the day. Let's see, where is that buy order? There we go. Yep. So just bought some extra shares of Chippy, and I plan to increase these positions. I want to get Chippy to at least $10,000, if not 15, and then just continue going from there. Probably just dollar cost averaging as I go. PLTW, the biggest loser of the bunch for today. The total return was negative $4,700. Basically wiped away all my gains. Right? No big deal. I don't really care. I'm not getting out of PLTW. I'm not getting out of Palantir. Still a big believer of Palantir, right? NVW, Nvidia, weekly pay ETF from Round Hill, nothing changed there. I didn't buy no new shares. XPay, XET, no changes there, right? These are cover call ETFs. So I did get paid some dividends from PLTW, and that was in the amount of $401. So that was, pretty nice amount for a week. I mean, that's a really good amount for a week. NVW, I forget how much they paid me. Let's see. NVW paid me $271. So, I mean, all in all, it's about $670, almost $700. That's actually really good. But again, PLTW, NVW, their distributions will fluctuate based on how good of a week they're having, right? How good of a week they're having. Because when we were in that that severe downturn, right? That brutal downturn, PLTW was not paying out that much. It was not paying out that well. But as it gained momentum, as it gained a lot of traction behind the stock, the payouts got way better. So you have to remember, these weekly pay ETFs from Round Hill are bullish instruments. I cannot be any more clear about that. They should only be bought if you expect them to go up. Holding them through a downturn is scary as hell, and you're not going to be paid that well, right? But when they're on a good run, whether you want to do a dividend capture strategy or if you want to ride them up and swing trade them, whatever your strategy is. For me, I'm just going to hold it. You can collect the dividend that way. The dividend will be juicy, right? So it all depends on you. PLTW can go to zero, but the underlier would have to drop 83% in value. I'm not sure what Palantir would have to drop to in order for that to happen. I don't know if it's based on the current stock, or I forget what price was Palantir when PLTW was launched. All right. I forget I forget the price points. I'd have to do a little digging in the charts, but yes, PLTW, NVW can absolutely go to zero. All right. Is it scary? Yeah. I mean, you lose your entire investment. Could it happen? I don't think the likelihood is there. I just don't see it happening at all. All right. You would have to have a series of catalysts that would happen in order for Palantir and Nvidia, for their stocks to lose 83% of value. I just don't see it happening, in my opinion. Citizen of the Year asks, is this free money? Absolutely. Citizen of the Year is a holder of our most treasured ETF, MSTY. All right. He doesn't admit it. He told me in private, but he actually does own MSTY. He wants to be paid $1 trillion from that ETF. So shout out to him. All right. So this is the Robinhood portfolio. Again, nothing too sexy, nothing too extravagant here. Let me pull up the M1 Finance portfolio, and then we'll close out the stream. Come on. Damn it. Refresh. Hold on, guys. I got to log back in. Let's see. Boom, boom. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. So this is the M1 Finance portfolio. As you guys can see, just chugging along. I'm going to just cover Realty Income because I covered it in the stream. They are a triple net lease company. These are the other tickers I was talking about. ADC is more of a not a micro cap, but it's more of a smaller cap company when compared to Realty Income. Triple net lease is probably Realty Income's biggest competitor. And now obviously Agree Realty, but Agree Realty has, in my opinion, a lot more room to grow because they're not as large as Realty Income. So, they're a little more nimble, a little more flexible in what they could do, but they're also a monthly paying dividend company. All right. Realty Income, I think, is a really great company, just like Agree Realty is a great company like Realty Income. They both have really great managers. Their values are in alignment with shareholder values. Okay. So, they're not out there to cheat, steal, and lie and, take on excessive debt like some of these other real estate investment trusts and then, burn the REIT down to the ground. So, really responsible management company or really responsible company all in all. Triple net lease, they pay quarterly. But again, they're also a great REIT. All right. By no stretch of the imagination are they a bad REIT. All three of these are solid picks in my opinion. They are in the sector of triple net lease. All right. So if you guys are interested in understanding what triple net lease is, recommend you just do a quick Google search to understand the contract, because this is what sets triple net lease from other real estate, companies and businesses. Triple net lease, basically they buy the building and they put a tenant in. The tenant is responsible for repairs, maintenance, I think taxes, and one other thing I can't remember. But basically, it's a triple N lease, right? And the only thing that they have to pay, that the REIT has to pay, is I believe it's just the mortgage. I might be getting that mixed up. It's been a while since I looked at triple net leases, but the contract is very favorable to a landlord. But it's also good for, the tenant, because as the tenant signs a contract, they are locked into a certain rent with, very small rent escalators over the years, because rents typically rise, right? Rents typically go up. But when you sign into a contract for like a 10-year lease, let's say Dollar General signs a 10-year lease for like $1,000, right? 10 years from now, that rent could be worth, $3,000, $4,000, but they still have that contract that's good for $1,000 a month. So definitely really big fan of triple net lease. So Padre says absolute net for me. They have to pay for structural repairs in triple net lease. Yeah, exactly. There we go. So yeah, that's going to do it for this portfolio, guys. That's going to do it for this stream. We're pretty much at the top of the hour. Again, nothing exciting here. I think, maybe one day I'll throw MST in here into the crypto ETF, right? Because I want weekly pay with 2x leverage on MSTR. That's what the pros do. All right. So anyways, guys, hey G bro, welcome back, man. Glad to see you on the channel. Let's see. Padre says the owner absolute net is that mailbox money. See, that's what I'm talking about. See, I mostly invest in apartments, so I've never invested into a triple net lease, building or project, but it's something that kind of piqued my interest. Same thing with self-storage. I really, really like self-storage, but you only have so much money. So maybe one day in the future. But guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope you guys got a lot of value from the stream. Hope you guys really enjoyed the stream. And long AMD if you are, long Palantir if you are, short the hell out of SMCI. Screw them. I'm just half kidding. But hope you guys really enjoyed the stream. All right, guys, I'm going to take off. I got gym stuff I got to do. You guys have a great rest of your evening, wherever you're at in the world. I appreciate you guys joining the stream, shooting the breeze with me and taking time out of your day, to get some, decent news. All right, guys, you guys take care.